welcome back to another episode of Good Question by CoinScheduleTV. Today on Good Question, we had on Ultan Miller, Head of Sales at Saxon Advisors, a London-based corporate finance boutique that specialises in the digital asset sector. In this episode, we dove into STOs and tried to answer the question, is 2019 the year of the STO? We hope you enjoy this episode. So Ultan, thanks very much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Anthony. It's a pleasure.
No, it's good. So the question I always ask, just starting off, is how did you get into cryptocurrencies? And what do you find interesting about them?
How did I get into cryptocurrency? Well, I've been involved in building various web and software businesses for the last 7-8 years. So it's been pretty hard to miss. Anyone who's in the tech startup ecosystem is for all of that time was constantly having discussions about crypto. Ironically, I was running a social shopping website for sneakerheads at one stage, which we were potentially going to move onto the blockchain.
Okay.
The reason we looked at that was in the sneaker market, a lot of people buy and sell trainers secondhand, and there's a big problem with fakes. So we were discussing, this is probably around 2014, if we, at the point of purchase, put some of these trainers onto the blockchain, and then when you trade them secondhand, that blockchain record would be transferred. We didn't decide to do it in the end because we realized that we'd have to attach the product, the physical sneaker, in some way to the blockchain. How do you do that?
Sure.
Barcode, or do you put an NFC in the trainer? It was looking quite problematic, and we realized that the blockchain record was only as good as the way that we were interfacing with the sneaker itself.
Sure, yeah.
So, we parked the idea, but that was my first kind of exploration of that in 2014. Ironically, I wish in hindsight we pursued the idea and tokenized it mid 2017. I'm sure it would have gone down a storm. But yeah, no, sadly wasn't meant to be at that stage. Then I really got active in terms of working in the space at the turn of 2017, 2018, peak of the bubble. I was alerted through my network to some very exciting ICO projects that were taking place in London, and got involved basically helping businesses solve one particular problem, which was the exchange listings element. At the time, there was a lot of cowboy and underhand behavior in the space. I thought that specifically the way that exchange listings were taking place could be improved significantly. So that was the reason why I actually started Saxon Advisors with my business partner, was to solve the problem of transparency for exchanges, so helping them assess the risk of having to delist a given token. So we worked very closely with the team at Bitfinex and Etfinex to develop a digital asset evaluation framework, and that managed to gain traction with quite a few exchanges. And then since then we've evolved into the corporate finance space. So it's been just over a year now of active into the finance space. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's always been a sideline interest.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's a shame that you didn't do the sneaker blockchain project. That ICO would have been astronomical, I'm sure.
This is it, man. This is it. Yeah.
God, you could be on a beach in the Bahamas by now, living off that token sale money.
No, I'm sure there's plenty of people thinking the same.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I've spoken to you previously, and you said that your area of expertise regarding 2019, the state of the market, is along the STO route.
Well, I think it's of all of the aspects of the crypto ecosystem, the narratives, it's by far the most exciting and by far potentially the most transformational. There's lots people can talk about, but I don't think that anything really carries the same weight as STOs as a trend. We are, to be controversial, we're very bullish on STOs, and we do think, I know that you wanted the topic of this to be whether or not 2019 will be the year of the STO.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say yes. there's a lot of people doubting the STO. We think that 2019 will be the year. If by it being the year, do we mean will there be loads of teenagers in their bedrooms starting companies and writing white papers and raising those via an STO? Then no, that's not going to happen. But what we do think is that this year we will start to see some of the first successful and well-reported STOs, and that we'll start to see a few things form that enable that. It's not going to be 2017, 2018 hype, but there could be some very large amounts of money raised.
So why do you find it so interesting?
Well, I find it interesting because as an entrepreneur, I spent so much time raising capital for my businesses, and I was always surprised at how kind of broken the process was. Just to give you one example, in one of my businesses, one of my investors went through a divorce and needed to liquidate 50% of his assets. He got in touch with me, and we suddenly needed to find, a low-cost way of transferring his shares to someone else. It's not that easy in a private limited company. So I think the liquidity angle for me is very exciting. I think the liquidity angle, makes sense for a number of reasons. But really it's just always about lowering the cost of raising capital and reaching a greater audience, and if through STOs we can do both of those things, then it's a huge triumph.
I agree. So the secondary market sale and the liquidity argument, I think it's a nice argument. I understand where they're coming from, but do you see any evidence of that today or in the next few months? Because as far as I could find, I couldn't really see the evidence of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk, very little action. As my mum would say, a lot of these security token exchanges are all mouth and no trousers.
Exactly.
But I don't want to doubt anyone. We're in touch with some very credible players in the space who are working with legislators to do this. How quickly they will be able to deliver, is up for debate. We were promised that the first few exchanges would come online towards the end of last year. We haven't seen that. I know Bancor professed that their liquidity network can be used for security tokens. Once again, I think it's interesting. Apparently they've had some traction. But I can't say that we've had the secondary market that we all dream for really arrive yet. And I think there's obviously from a legal standpoint, there's obstacles, but also the sentiment with a lot of the exchanges that we speak to, the top ones, is that they don't want to move first. They want someone else to do it. They want someone else to, get battered around a little bit, make all of the mistakes, and iron out the path for them to enter. And so, it really is down to the first few lemmings to jump off the cliff, And I think that once those who are brave enough to take some of those leaps and just start, acting, then I think, we'll start to see it's all about precedents in our legal system, and once precedent is set, I think that I think that we'll see a lot more activity.
Right, and do you have any case examples of successful STOs? Because at CoinSchedule, we're keeping an eye on the STO markets. We've not made the data available yet, but as far as we're aware, there's been 110 STOs globally up until this point. But could you name any of them that have done it correctly, that have followed the guidelines required, the requirements, and have done it correctly?
No, I couldn't. It's possible that there are some within that group who have done everything perfectly, but I think right now it's the rule of lawyers rather than the rule of law. It's still very blurred lines, so it's difficult for me to comment. Our business, we're a corporate finance advisory, and we help people value the asset that they're issuing and to place it with investors. When it comes to legals, we work with partners on that front, but we don't profess to have the answers.
Sure.
So I would be I'd be reluctant to comment on anyone else's activities. What I can say is that the two STOs that we considered partnering with were crippled by legal complexities, had to try to change jurisdiction on numerous occasions, and really struggled. So it might be that people are announcing STOs. As far as I'm aware, the only successful, legally compliant STO that has taken place is an exercise 2030, an offshoot. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pillar Project.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So 2030, one of their divisions is a business called Token Factory, which is involved in equity issuance, and they are part of the FCA sandbox. I was very pleased to read in Crypto AM this week that a good friend of mine, Rob Gaskell, announced that they have apparently done the first FCA compliant sort of equity token issuance. You've also got Novora, who have been issuing bonds very successfully. They've announced a huge fundraising round recently. I'm sure that everything they've been doing is well above board. They're connected with Allen and Overy, and I'm sure that they've made sure that everything is being done above board. So I think there's obviously a lot of stuff that's taking place, but I don't expect those STOs and these proof of concepts that are being successfully executed to be the ones that people have been pushing and trying to crowd sale. I think it had been much more kind of closed beta type exercises to date.
Yeah, so I agree with you, because I think that the rate at which STOs become mainstream is simply the rate at which people are willing to try and push these boundaries forward. It just simply is that case, because as soon as a law firm teams up with an STO in a certain jurisdiction, they're able to go through the process smoothly. Well, then that obviously sets precedent and a path which everybody else can follow down. My next question to you is, what would accelerate STO adoption in society? Like, is there a few things that if you could wave your magic wand that would just cause it?
Absolutely. So, two things. First one is, name an institutional investor today that has a mandate to buy security tokens. It's very difficult, right? I mean, your typical audiences, at least for the projects that we work with, are either traditional VC or digital asset investment funds. Okay, if you present a security token to a VC, I say, we're not holding that. What is that? That's not an equity. We're not allowed to buy this. If you take it to a digital asset fund, they say, "Oh, that's a security. We don't want that." So there's a real problem here where you have a bifurcation in the kind of institutional fundraising market for a lot of projects, and that bifurcation hasn't resulted in either of these kind of groups being able to purchase security tokens. So my call for this year is, I believe that we will start to see funds raised with a specific mandate to purchase security tokens. So that's one of the key things that I think that will happen this year that will foster growth. Because otherwise, what are you left with? You're left with brave high net worth investors, possibly some family offices that have a flexible mandate. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing is that security tokens, just speaking of equity tokens, right? If we're looking at kind of early stage technology companies, in most instances around the world, there are numerous grants, tax incentives, and support available for investing in equity in growth stage businesses. So until security tokens begin to qualify for some of these tax incentives, grants, and associated benefits, I think that even, no matter how much lower cost it might be to issue a token rather than equity, those costs are overwhelmed by some of the government-led initiatives to attract investment into traditional securities. So one thing that HMRC could do would be to say that all security tokens qualify for SEIS, EIS, and VCT tax benefits. That would be huge. It would make the VC have to invest in only tax qualifying projects, available to STOs. So those are two things I think that would really help.
Okay, I like that. Two good suggestions. Regarding where STOs market share is going to come from, there's some people who think that STOs are going to be the logical evolution of ICOs and utility tokens, and that's one argument. The argument that I prefer is that STOs are going to take their market share more from legacy systems, from angel investors, from venture capitalists, and from IPOs. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. The liquidity benefit associated with a security token is of no value to an investor in an early stage company. They're buying to hold. Most investors invest with the power law in mind. They expect 90% of their companies to fail or barely survive, and then one or two to completely outperform the rest and to arrive at some kind of massive acquisition or IPO. So with that in mind, the ability to liquidate along the way is kind of irrelevant. They're looking to hold for 10 years. Now, when it comes to other categories of investment, you're looking at established businesses, mid-market companies. The cost of issuing debt or of issuing equity is very high. It needs to be a liquid asset. And here, if we have a way of lowering the cost of issuance, then it's very attractive. So I think that, yes, you see STOs really starting to cannibalize, mid and later stage activity rather than the early stage. So not an extension of the ICO boom, as I mentioned earlier.
So do you think that ICOs, UTOs, and STOs will coexist peacefully in the future?
Hell yeah. I think, look, the ICO has incredible value, and some would argue, perhaps rightly so, that an ICO is more radical and revolutionary than an STO, which is almost like an incremental innovation. I do believe for that very reason you will have primarily B2C applications where access to the good or service is something that people value. There'll be a market for that. I mean, we see that with the Kickstarter model. There's no equity sold on there. It's the right to the product or service that will be manufactured. So for sure, if Kickstarter can exist alongside seeders, then of course you will have ICOs coexisting with STOs.
Right, okay, I agree. And remember that article that I sent you, the tokenization of everything?
Yes.
It's a phrase that I stumbled across when I was researching STOs, and I find it is a very useful phrase. The tokenization of everything. It's like a goal that the token economy is heading towards. And STOs will obviously play a certain role within the tokenization of everything. But my question is, what is the limitation of STOs, and what actually can be classified as an STO? If I wanted to, for example, tokenize a concept car or a patent or a house, can that be an STO? And if so, where is the limit of STOs? Can I then patent my future earnings if I want to sell, if I want someone to pay for my tuition fees? Can I tokenize a portion of my future earnings to whoever is investing in me? It's a question that I don't know if we're going to be able to come to the answer to, but it's one that I'm most interested about when it comes to the tokenization of everything.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And the possibilities are endless, and you get new assets emerge. It's a super exciting time. It's actually one of the reasons that I'm very long on Ethereum. I think that a lot of these assets will be tokenized in a way that depends on the Ethereum network. It will. I mean, it looks like a good candidate at this stage for powering, the backbone of that tokenization of everything. We've got a lot of developer traction. It's very exciting. The question around where the limits to this exist. Luckily, we had FCA guidance issued in the autumn. So, according to their manual, anything that resembles a specified investment is going to be deemed a security token. Once again, I'm not a lawyer, but they state those on the website, and I think that there will be there'll be many discussions around how similar is this to some of those stated specified investments, but we're certainly treading very carefully. I mean, we act presently as an unregulated organisation, but were we to move into security tokens in an aggressive way, I think that it would obviously be appropriate for us to become regulated.
Yes, true. And regarding the infrastructure, because all of this is dependent on the infrastructure and the pace of development, what infrastructure projects are you most excited about, and how do you feel towards the general quality and development of the infrastructure of the STO market?
Yeah, so I'm very excited about what Liquids are doing with their STO exchange. I think that they have an incredible team there. They have weathered the storm of several audits from Japanese authorities. They are regulated in Japan, and I just love the team there. So a big shout out to all of the guys at Liquid. The other thing I think we see is it was announced at Delta Summit that obviously Binance will be working with the Maltese authority to create security token exchange. Who knows when that will come to fruition, but it's good to know that that's working or in the works. But really, when it comes down to it, the home of finance is London, and the most exciting initiatives, I believe, are taking place within our capital. There is no reason for London not to be the centre of the STO boom. Navora and their recent fundraising, I think, is a great, it's a great bit of PR for the capital on what we're doing. And as I mentioned earlier, very excited about some of the moves that Token Factory are making. For some of the other platforms that raised ICOs or to fund their platforms, I can't say I know what Polymath have done or what some of these other guys have actually brought to life. It's quite possible that they've been very active. It hasn't been on my radar, but we're out trumpeting London's success stories, we give credence to those other operators, but we're interested in making London the home of STOs. Now, I mean, if anyone who is watching is interested in finding out about the differences between the platforms, our good friends at Amazix have created a really nice booklet, which we could send out with this, which puts down some of the differences between STO issuance platforms.
I'll put a link in the description of the video.
Yeah, that's good. So we're great friends with those guys. So Amazix, we're a corporate finance partner of theirs, and we work very closely with the team, and we respect some of the stuff that their guys do. So very happy to share that with the audience.
Cool. And my final question to you is, where do you see the STO market 5 years from today?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's why I saved it till last.
Yeah, jeez. That's a difficult one. I can tell you where I would like it to be.
Well, give me two versions, where you would ideally have it be and where you think it's actually going to be. That would be interesting.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the dream is that, someone who has, my investor who I referenced earlier, who, needed to liquidate the assets in my startup, I imagine a world where he meets a guy on a train and at almost zero transactional cost, he has transferred his equity ownership in my private limited company to the other guy by the time they get off the train.
Okay, cool.
That, for me, is where I would like this to be. Do I think we'll get there in 5 years? I don't know. It's often said that people overestimate what will happen in the short term and underestimate what will happen in the long run. 5 years feels like a short space of time, so maybe we won't quite get there by then.
It's a century in crypto. In the crypto world, that's a century long.
Yeah, but how many users do we have on dApps today?
True.
So you know, there's two sides to every coin. Where I think it will be is, I think that, as we discussed earlier, you know, mid-market and established companies will be using security tokens as a lower cost way to issue bonds and equity. It's possible that there will have been some alternative investments move successfully onto you know, some of these security token issuance platforms. I can't speak for those; it's not our area of expertise. But yeah, I think that you see some real traction, and I mean, look, it will be successful if it's not a hype, if it just slots into the background, if it just makes things quicker and easier. And I think for a very good percentage of finance, it will have done that by then. Okay.
Right. Well, I'll hold you to that in 5 years' time. All right. Thanks for coming on the show, Ultan. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Anthony. Pleasure.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. Cheers.
Bye. See ya. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends.